And this was also back in the day when there was not, platforms and the internet and ways to find support for grief. I mean, you were literally handed, 7 books that existed on, the bookshelf on how to deal with death. And again, growing up in a very Christian society, it was very much about, okay, you honor them when they die and then you move on and you never speak to them again. And one tenet of Judaism, or at least the Judaism that I was brought up in, is that even if people die, you continue to talk about them and you raise their memory all the time. So I think the hardest thing in my 20s probably was this notion that so many people ran away from me because they didn't know how to actually, they didn't know what to say. It was like they felt like if they brought my mom up, it would bring me down. And what they didn't understand was she was never not on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And, I do want to just fast forward for a second, because about 5 or 6 years ago, dear friends of mine today, or, 5 or 6 years ago, founded a platform called Modern Loss, which for anyone who goes through any kind of loss and is grieving, whether it be the loss of a pet, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a parent, you name it. It's a platform that provides all sorts of writings and connections to people so that you aren't alone. Okay. So I do think in my 20s, there was very much of a, I want to flee. And I ended up fleeing. About 5 years later, I moved from Washington, D.C. to Southern California, where I knew no one, for a new job. And it was really, I think, my quest, again, in hindsight, to start over, start afresh, forget about what happened, which, haha, good luck. But, over my lifetime, if I was to say one of the positives that came of dealing with such a tragedy, is that you've already suffered the worst. So it enables you to take risks that perhaps you would be less likely to take. Because if the worst has already happened, what else could happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Really interesting perspective. That last piece I find to be pretty compelling. Let me just understand a little bit, though, because you were in your early 20s, and I totally get it. Makes sense, this coma, and also the idea that people were going away from you.
Yeah.
I understand that even still today is probably a reaction that some people have. The triggers or the uncomfortable kind of space of being in that emotion with somebody is really something that people maybe by and large are just not comfortable doing. And
until they suffer loss,
until they experience something like that. Yeah.
Well, this will give you an inkling of the type of my mom's personality. When I was 13, my best girlfriend's mother died of cancer. And I still to this day remember my mom saying to me after she passed, "Whatever you do, Susan, don't ever be afraid to bring up her name after the fact."
Mm-hmm.
And Linda and I, to this day, we still talk about her mother. And at my mom's memorial service, I raised that. And I stated exactly what she had told me. And I asked the 600 people that turned up during a northeaster snowstorm to honor my mom, I said, let's never be afraid to speak her name. And honestly, that is why this book is in a way so deeply special to me, because I wrote it in honor of her, because she was known as a serial connector. Long before the internet, long before social media, using the old-fashioned telephone and a manual typewriter. So when I think now that I can in some teeny way keep her memory alive, to me, even if the book sells 10 copies, I hope it sells a few more than that. But me, at least I have done, a real honor and tribute to her.